Today we're going to take a look at two types of special right triangles. The first one is called a 45-45-90 special right triangle. The second is a 30-60-90. I've given you two separate worksheets today to practice, and so a recommendation of mine would be to take the notes on 45-45-90 triangles, pause the video, and go complete that first worksheet so that you have those rules down. Then come back and watch the rest of the video on 30-60-90, then complete that. All right, just a suggestion, or you can take all the notes at one time, but the worksheets are separate. 45-45-90 special right triangles. If two angles in your triangle are congruent, then we learned earlier using the base angle theorem that you will then have two sides of your triangle congruent. So every single time a 45-45-90 is going to be an isosceles right triangle. Every time. All right, so that means that both the legs, and we'll call them x, will be the same. If our leg is always x, the way we find the hypotenuse is we do not need to do Pythagorean theorem. There's a short and simple rule that says the hypotenuse is always the leg times the square root of 2. Very simply. All right, so if you're ever given the hypotenuse, we would just reverse the rule by dividing by the square root of 2 to get the leg. So let's take a look at some examples. Number 1, all right, when you look at this triangle, you'll notice we obviously have a right angle, but one of the angles is marked 45, which is all you need to know, then that the other angle is 45. So your two legs are going to be congruent. So x is simply 8. There's no work to be shown. To get the hypotenuse, the rule says you take that leg and multiply it times the square root of 2. All right, we can't really multiply those together. We stick them together. Square root of 2 is already simplified. So again, no work. That's your answer. Number 2. Again, we notice the 45-degree angle. So we know that we've got 45-45-90. The two legs, which this time are the y and the 25, would be the congruent. So we'll go ahead down here and mark y equals 25. The hypotenuse is x, so that is simply the leg times the square root of 2. Done. As far as showing work, the only work that I would like to see is that you mark the two legs, the two sides that you know are congruent. All right, that's going to help you as well. All right, so number 3. Number 3, we're given the hypotenuse. But again, I see the 45-degree angle, so I know I've got a 45-45-90. It is the x and the y that will be congruent, the same. When you're given the hypotenuse, to get either x or y, we need to reverse the rule. So we're going to take 19 and divide by the square root of 2. Now we can't leave it like that because we're not allowed to leave radicals in the denominator. We need to rationalize it. So you're going to multiply top and bottom by the square root of 2, which gets us 19 root 2 over the square root of 4, which is just 2. Always check your outer numbers. I do not want decimals, so we're going to leave this, since 19 is not divisible by 2, as 19 root 2 over 2, and that will be the same answer for both. All right. The only time that you may have to simplify a radical when you're multiplying is if one of the legs is actually a radical itself. All right, and if you're multiplying root 2 times another root, you might get a bigger number that's going to need to be simplified. All right, if you divide, you're going to need to rationalize. Okay. My suggestion is you go practice the 45-45-90 worksheet first and then come back. If you want to continue, we'll keep going. The second special right triangle is called a 30-60-90 special right triangle. All right. Notice we've got 3 different angle measures, therefore we're going to have 3 different side lengths. So these are always scalene right triangles. The most important side is what we call the shorter leg. And in this little bubble, it tells us the shorter leg is always opposite the 30-degree angle, and the longer leg is always opposite the 60-degree angle. All right, so in a picture here where we've got 30, 60, 90, across from the 30, this will be called your short leg. Across from the 60, opposite 60, would be called the longer leg. Of course, across from the right angle is always the hypotenuse. The short leg is what we hope to always be given first, but if not, we need to find it first. So if the short leg is x, very simply to get the longer leg, we take x times the square root of 3. To get the hypotenuse, we're going to take the short leg times 2. All right, so again, this is the short times the square root of 3, and this is the short times 2. So let's take a look at our examples. Numbers 4, all right. We got a right triangle, and I see one of the angles is labeled with a 60, so the other angle has to be 30. So across from the 30 is the short. Just like I asked you to label, right, opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse when we did trig, I want to see short, long, hypotenuse. If you want to use SLH, that's fine, but these need to be labeled. All right, the short is the one that we either need to know or find first. Since we are given that, then it's very simply we just multiply to get the other part. So x is our long, so that's simply going to be the short times the square root of 3. The hypotenuse is going to be the short times 2, which would be 10. Number 5. I see I have a 30-degree angle, so of course the other one has to be 60, so I've got a 30, 60, 90. Across from the 30 is 14, that's my short leg. Across from the 60 is the y, that will be my longer leg. And across from the right angle is the hypotenuse. So again, I'm given the short, so to get the long, which is y, I would simply do 14 times the square root of 3. To get the hypotenuse, I'm going to take 14 times 2, which will be 28. Look at number 6. Number 6, all right. Again, I see the 30-degree angle, so I know I've got a 30, 60, 90. Across from the 30 is the x. That's going to be my short leg. Across from the 60 is my y. That's the long leg. Across from the right angle is the 32, that's the hypotenuse. So this time, I'm going to still circle the short because that's the one I need to find first. I wasn't given that this time. So I need to reverse the rule of what was given. So usually I would multiply by 2 to get the hypotenuse. So to get x, I'm going to take the 32 and divide by 2. And that's going to give me 16. Once I know the short, then I just multiply to get the long, and I take 16 times the cube root of 3. Number 7. Let's label our triangle. I'm given a 60-degree angle, so I know the other one's a 30. So across from that, which is y, will be my short. Across from the 60 is the long, and across from the right angle is the hypotenuse. So once again, I need to get y first, so I reverse the rule of what's given. So to get y, I'm going to take the hypotenuse and divide by 2, and that's going to get me 23. So y is 23, and then the long is 23 times the square root of 3. Number 8. I'm given a 60-degree angle, so I know the other one's 30. So across from the 30 will be my short. Across from the 60 is my long. And then across from the right angle is the x. Y is the one I need to find first. So I have to reverse the rule of what is given. Well, this time I'm given the long. So to get Y, do the work down here. I'm going to take 20, and the reverse the rule is then to divide by the cube root, or square root, sorry, of 3. So I need to rationalize. So I'm going to multiply top and bottom, each by the square root of 3, and I end up with 20 square roots of 3 over the square root of 9, which will just become 3. These numbers on the outside do not simplify. Again, do not give me decimals. So Y is going to be left as 20 root 3 over 3. Once you know the short, to get the hypotenuse, we're going to multiply by 2. All right. Now, when you're multiplying this by 2, it's like by 2 over 1. So the 2 only gets multiplied to the 20. So we're going to end up with 40 square roots of 3 over 3. Again, the 40 is not divisible by 3, so we would leave it like that. All right. So sometimes when you are given the long side and you have to reverse, you do get crazy answers like that, but that's okay. And number 9, so again, I see the 30-degree angle, so I know this one over here will be 60. Across from the 30, which is the x, is the short. Across from the 60 is the long. And then across from the right angle is the hypotenuse. So again, we're given the long. So I need to get the short side first. So to get x, I'm going to take the long and divide by the square root of 3. I love it when this happens, right? Because I don't need to rationalize. Those simplify. The roots 3's cancel. So x, which is the short leg, is just going to be 9. The hypotenuse then is just 9 times 2, or 18. So this is what you're practicing on the 30, 60, 90 worksheet. Again, make sure I see that you're labeling short, long, and hypotenuse. All right. Come see me if you need any extra help.